My daughter told me, "It's not your day, Mom," at her own wedding, right there in front of Michael's entire family. I sat there in that back corner table, clutching my purse like it was the only thing keeping me together, watching my own flesh and blood treat me like some uninvited guest who'd crashed her perfect party. The room was spinning with laughter and champagne glasses clinking, classical music flowing from the string quartet I'd never heard practicing, but I felt like I was drowning in my own chair, suffocating on the weight of 29 years of unconditional love being thrown back in my face. If you've ever been pushed aside by someone you gave everything to, if you've ever felt invisible in a room full of people who should see you, who should remember every sacrifice you made to get them exactly where they are, pull up that chair a little closer to wherever you're listening to this. Because today, this coffee tastes bitter as Monday morning regret, and this story cuts deeper than any wound I thought my own child could ever inflict on the woman who brought her into this world. I raised Sarah alone after her father Robert died in that car wreck when she was just 8 years old. Pigtails and gap teeth and a laugh that could light up our little house on Maple Street. 20 years of double shifts at Murphy's Diner and cleaning offices until my back ached and my feet felt like they were on fire. 20 years of saying, maybe next time, to myself, to my dreams, to any chance at my own happiness, so she could have everything I never did. I thought that meant something. I thought being her mother, being the woman who chose her future over my own comfort every single day for 2 decades, earned me at least a seat at the table that mattered. But there I was, table 12, squeezed between her college friends' parents who kept asking if I knew anything about the real wedding details, and some distant cousin from Michael's side who kept asking if I was part of the catering staff, because apparently I didn't look fancy enough to belong at this $500 a plate reception. The mother of the bride, treated like an afterthought in a navy dress I'd saved 3 months of diner tips to buy, sitting in the social equivalent of Siberia. And if you're someone who believes that mothers deserve respect, that sacrifice should mean something in this world, that love shouldn't be conditional on how well you fit into someone else's upgrade, hit that subscribe button right now. I'm Margaret Thompson, and I've got stories that'll make you want to call your mama tonight and tell her you love her while you still can. Let me take you back to when Sarah was just a gap-toothed 7-year-old with chocolate chip cookie crumbs on her Sunday dress, standing on that old wooden kitchen chair beside me, flour dusting her dark hair like snow, trying to crack eggs for our traditional Sunday pancakes without getting shells everywhere. "Mommy, when I get married someday, you'll make my wedding cake, right?" she'd say, sticky fingers reaching up to touch my face, and I'd kiss that sweet forehead and promise her the moon, the stars, and anything else her little heart could dream up. After Robert died in that terrible accident on Interstate 95, it became just us against the whole world. Sarah and Margaret Thompson, the dynamic duo who could face anything as long as we had each other. I'd drag myself home from my morning shift at Murphy's Diner, where I served coffee and tried to smile while my heart was still breaking every single day, grab a quick shower that never felt long enough, then head straight to my evening job, cleaning those fancy downtown offices where lawyers and business people left their messes for people like me to clean up. Sarah would spend those long afternoons and evenings at Rose Martinez's house next door, my neighbor who became more like family than some of my actual relatives ever were. Rose had this old oak table in her kitchen where Sarah would spread out her homework, chewing on pencil erasers and asking for help with math problems that got harder every year. I'd pick her up around 10 at night, and she'd fall asleep in the car, her head against my shoulder, completely trusting that I'd get her home safe no matter how tired I was. I never let her see me cry during those first terrible months after we lost Robert. Never let her know that sometimes I ate nothing but peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so she could have real meals with vegetables and meat and all the growing up nutrition she needed. When she wanted to join the high school debate team and needed money for tournaments and a suit that would help her compete with kids whose parents drove BMWs, I sold my grandmother's pearl necklace, the only valuable thing I owned, and the last connection to my own mother who'd passed when Sarah was just a baby. When she got accepted to college and needed a laptop for her classes, something that seemed as expensive as a car to me back then, I worked Christmas Eve and New Year's Day double shifts for the overtime pay, missing our traditional holiday movies and homemade cookies. But seeing her face light up when she opened that box, seeing her realize she could compete with anyone, that made every missed holiday worth it. "Mom, you're the strongest person I know," she'd tell me during those late-night talks when homework got overwhelming or some boy broke her tender heart, and I'd stroke her hair and tell her that strength runs in the Thompson women, that we don't give up on the people we love, that we find a way to make things work, no matter what life throws at us. The first real crack in our foundation came the weekend Sarah brought Michael Harrison home for dinner, during her second year at that prestigious law firm downtown. I'd spent my entire Saturday off shopping for ingredients and making her favorite pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the same recipe my mother had taught me and I'd been making for special occasions since Sarah was 12 years old. I'd set our little dining room table with the good china I'd been saving for moments exactly like this one, when my daughter brought home someone important enough to meet her mother. Michael was polite enough when he shook my hand, but I could see him taking careful inventory of our modest house on Maple Street, his eyes noting the second-hand furniture we'd collected over the years, the way I had to jiggle the kitchen faucet handle just right to get it to stop that persistent dripping I could never afford to fix properly. Sarah kept apologizing for things that had never needed apologies before in our home, the size of our living room compared to his family's estate, my questions about his work and his family, even the way I served dinner family style instead of having individual plated meals like some fancy restaurant. "Mom, maybe we should eat in the dining room tonight," she suggested, even though we'd shared thousands of meals at that old kitchen table where she'd done homework and we'd talked about everything from boys to college dreams to what she wanted to be when she grew up. Michael's family is used to more formal dining situations. The way she said formal made it sound like she was embarrassed of every comfortable, loving meal we'd ever shared in that kitchen. After they left that evening, Michael's expensive car pulling out of our driveway like it couldn't wait to escape our neighborhood, I found myself walking through our house and seeing it through different eyes, for the first time in years. The couch we'd picked out together at the furniture outlet when she graduated high school suddenly looked shabby and small. The family photos I'd been so proud of displaying, Sarah's school pictures, our vacation to the lake, the two of us at her law school graduation, seemed ordinary and almost pathetic compared to what I imagined decorated the walls of Michael's family home. The phone calls started getting shorter after that dinner. When I'd call to ask about her week, about work, about wedding plans that seemed to be moving forward without any input from me, she'd give me these vague, distracted answers. "We're handling everything, Mom. The Harrisons have wedding planners who take care of all the details. You don't need to worry about any of it. Don't worry." This was my only daughter's wedding, the moment I'd been dreaming about since she was that little girl promising I'd make her wedding cake, and she was telling me not to worry about the details. 3 months before the wedding, she took me shopping for what she called my mother of the bride outfit. Not for her dress. She'd already chosen that during some exclusive shopping trip with Michael's mother Patricia at boutiques I'd never even heard of, places where they probably served champagne while you tried on gowns that cost more than I made in 6 months. No, this shopping trip was for my costume, my uniform for playing the smaller role I'd apparently been assigned in my own daughter's wedding story. The morning of Sarah's wedding day, I woke up at 5:30 with my heart full of excitement and old traditions. I drove to the grocery store before it got busy and bought fresh blueberries, real maple syrup, and the special vanilla extract I only used for important occasions. Then I went to my kitchen and made Sarah's favorite breakfast, fluffy blueberry pancakes with butter melting into golden pools, the same breakfast I'd made for every birthday, every first day of school, every time she needed comfort or celebration throughout her entire life. I packed those warm pancakes in my best container, the one with the tight lid that would keep them perfect, and drove across town to her expensive downtown apartment, practicing what I'd say when she opened the door. Maybe we could sit together like we used to, just for a few minutes before the chaos began. Maybe she'd remember how much she used to love our quiet morning talks, how she used to say those pancakes tasted like love itself. She answered her door in a silk robe that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, her hair already half-styled by some professional team I could hear working in her bedroom, and she looked at the container in my hands like I was delivering something contaminated. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Her voice had that sharp edge I'd been hearing more and more lately. "I told you yesterday I'd see you at the church. We have a very strict schedule today, and you're not part of the morning preparations." Behind her, I could see Patricia Harrison directing a small army of people I didn't recognize. Florists arranging elaborate bouquets, photographers testing their equipment, makeup artists setting up stations with more cosmetics than I'd owned in my entire lifetime. It was like walking into a movie production. where I was definitely not on the call sheet. "Oh my goodness," Patricia said when she noticed me standing there, her voice dripping with the kind of fake sweetness that makes your teeth ache. "Margaret, how incredibly thoughtful of you to drop by unannounced on such a busy morning. We really do have everything under control here." "I just wanted to help," I said, still holding those pancakes like some kind of peace offering from a world that no longer mattered. I thought maybe Sarah might want to have breakfast together, just like we always... Help? Sarah's laugh was sharp and unfamiliar. Nothing like the warm giggles I remembered from her childhood. "Mom, everything's already been handled by professionals. Patricia's wedding coordinator has been planning this for 8 months. You just need to show up at the church on time and, well, just blend in quietly, okay? Don't try to insert yourself into things that are already organized. Blend in quietly. Insert myself. Like I was some stranger trying to crash her wedding instead of the woman who'd given up everything so she could become the person standing there in that silk robe, surrounded by other people's money and other people's planning, treating her own mother like an unwelcome interruption in her perfect day. The church ceremony was absolutely beautiful. I'll give Patricia Harrison credit for that. Saint. Matthew's Episcopal Church was decorated with white roses and baby's breath, thousands of dollars worth of flowers, creating an atmosphere that looked like something from a fairy tale or a magazine spread. The pews were filled with people in expensive clothes, conversations flowing in the confident tones of families who'd never worried about money or wondered if they belonged anywhere they wanted to be. I took my assigned seat, not in the front row where mothers of brides traditionally sit, but 3 rows back next to Robert's sister Linda, who I barely spoke to anymore except for Christmas cards and brief conversations at funerals. "Where's your corsage?" Aunt Linda whispered as the processional music began, and that's when the reality hit me like a physical blow. In all the professional planning, in all the careful coordination and expensive attention to detail, no one had thought to order a corsage for the mother of the bride. Sarah walked down that aisle like an absolute princess, and I sat there like a forgotten guest at my own daughter's wedding, watching the most important moment of her life from the discount seats, while Patricia Harrison beamed in the front row, wearing a corsage that matched the wedding colors perfectly. The reception hall was even more spectacular than the church, crystal chandeliers casting rainbow light across white tablecloths, centerpieces that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, a live band instead of a DJ, because that's how people like the Harrisons celebrated their important moments. I wandered around the cocktail hour looking for my table assignment, clutching my small purse and trying to smile at people who looked right through me like I was part of the hired help. Table 12, all the way in the back corner, practically hidden behind a decorative pillar, near the kitchen doors where waiters kept rushing back and forth with their trays and their urgency. I was seated with people I'd never met in my life, some college friends of Sarah's who spent the entire dinner talking about law school memories I wasn't part of, a few distant relatives from Michael's side, who kept looking around confused about why they'd been banished to what was clearly the least important table in the room. From my corner seat, partially blocked by that pillar, I watched my daughter move through her reception like she was floating on air, accepting congratulations from everyone who mattered in her new world, posing for photographs with people who'd earned their place in her story while I sat forgotten in the shadows, picking at expensive food that tasted like disappointment. I kept waiting for her to notice me, to come over and include me in some small way, to remember that her mother was sitting alone at the worst table in the room, but she never even looked in my direction, never seemed to register that the woman who'd sacrificed everything for this moment was watching from the cheap seats like some uninvited stranger who'd somehow slipped past security. I excused myself from table 12 and walked to the ladies' room, needing a few minutes away from the laughter and celebration that I apparently wasn't welcome to join. Standing in front of that ornate mirror, looking at a woman in a simple navy dress surrounded by marble and gold fixtures that cost more than my car, I barely recognized myself. When had I become someone my own daughter was ashamed to acknowledge? When had the woman who'd built her entire world become too embarrassing to include in it? I was walking back toward my assigned exile when I saw Sarah near the bar with Patricia and several members of Michael's family, all of them holding champagne glasses and laughing about something that looked important and exclusive. For just a moment, I thought maybe I could approach them, maybe say something about how beautiful the reception was, maybe find some small way to connect with my daughter on the most important day of her life. "Sarah, sweetheart," I said, gently touching her arm, trying to keep my voice soft and non-threatening. Everything looks absolutely beautiful. You look so radiant, and I just wanted to tell you how proud I am." She turned around with an expression I'd never seen on her face before, something cold and hostile that made my heart stop beating for a moment. "Mom, what are you doing?" She glanced around at Patricia and the others, and I could see the panic in her eyes, the fear that I was about to embarrass her in front of people whose opinions mattered more than mine ever could. "I thought we talked about this. I thought you understood. I just wanted to tell you how proud I am of you, how much I love—" "It's not your day, Mom." The words came out sharp and clear, loud enough for everyone in that little circle to hear, cutting through the background music and conversation like a knife through silk. "Stay in your lane." The silence that followed felt like the entire room had stopped breathing. Patricia's perfectly manicured eyebrows shot up toward her hairline. Michael's uncle actually took a physical step backward. A waiter passing by with a tray of champagne glasses slowed down, clearly sensing the tension, and I just stood there, holding my little purse with both hands, feeling like I'd been slapped across the face in front of everyone who mattered in my daughter's new life. Stay in your lane. Like I was some random stranger who'd wandered into the wrong party, who'd forgotten her place in the social hierarchy. Like the woman who'd worked 2 jobs for 20 years, who'd sold her grandmother's jewelry and skipped her own meals so this ungrateful child could become the person standing there in that designer wedding dress, had no right to share in the happiness I'd literally paid for, with my own dreams and comfort and youth. I walked back to table 12 in complete silence, sat down in my assigned chair in the corner, and felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter, but infinitely more powerful. A recognition of who I'd been, who I'd raised, what I'd sacrificed, and what all of that was actually worth, regardless of what anyone in this room full of expensive strangers thought about it. The speeches began right after dinner. Michael's father talking about family traditions and welcomed additions to their lineage, Patricia welcoming Sarah into their family like she was some kind of prize they'd won in a competition I didn't even know I was entered in. Person after person took that microphone, sharing their wisdom and their connection to this moment, their joy and their hopes for the future, while I sat at table 12 realizing that no one planned to invite me to speak at my own daughter's wedding. But something inside me had finally had enough. Something that remembered every sacrifice, every double shift, every time I'd chosen her dreams over my own comfort, every moment I'd been proud to be Sarah Thompson's mother before she decided I wasn't good enough for her new world. I stood up from my corner table and walked to that microphone, not in anger or spite, but in quiet dignity, ready to remind everyone in that room exactly whose day this really was. "Good evening," I said, and my voice carried clearly across the reception hall, steady and sure. "I'm Margaret Thompson, Sarah's mother. I wasn't invited to speak tonight, but there are some things that need saying before this celebration ends." I talked about the little girl who used to promise me the world, about 20 years of putting someone else's happiness before my own, about what it really means to love someone so completely that you'll make yourself invisible so they can shine brighter. I talked about the real cost of success, about the difference between being grateful and being ashamed of where you came from, and what we lose when we forget the people who made our dreams possible. The room was absolutely silent, not the polite quiet of a planned speech, but the heavy, uncomfortable silence of people confronting a truth they'd been trying to avoid all evening. I saw Sarah's face, white as her wedding dress, finally seeing her mother not as an embarrassment to be hidden, but as the foundation everything else in her life had been built on. I ended with something I'd learned the hard way that night. We raise our children to fly away from us, but we never expect them to forget who gave them wings. You know what happened after that speech? Sarah called me every single day for 2 months, not because she felt guilty, though I'm sure she did, but because she finally understood what she'd almost thrown away forever. We're rebuilding our relationship now, slowly and carefully, like 2 people learning to trust each other again after a betrayal that cut deeper than either of us expected. Tell me in the comments, have you ever had to stand up for your own worth in a room full of people who'd forgotten what you meant to them? Have you ever loved someone so much that you made yourself small so they could be big, only to have them treat your sacrifice like it was worthless? If this story reminded you to call someone who sacrificed for your success, if it made you think about the people in your life you might be taking for granted, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification. Belle, I'm Margaret Thompson, and I have more stories about love and loss and finding your voice when everyone else wants you to disappear quietly into the background.